I wanted to go back to another absolutely disgusting phenomenon. You've called this the killing fields. I mean, it's already so disgusting to have concentration camps, but this is almost like a different level of Orwellian. So there's the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which you mentioned, and that's just started distributing aid on May 26th, and they've really been exposed as being nothing more than like a Squid Game like killing field. And leaked footage from the AP shows like countless other videos show Palestinians being shot at. More than 750 have been killed at aid sites in the last few weeks. Many more have been injured, and it's probably a lot higher than that. I don't even know what to ask because it's just such obvious evil. Even those in mainstream media have been noting it, which we will see shortly. But what are your thoughts on these aid stations?
Well, I was saying, as many people were, before the very first GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation personnel was ever deployed, that this scheme was a part of the plan of the Israeli regime for the final phase of the genocide in Gaza, the final phase of extermination, that it was never a humanitarian plan, which has now become obvious to almost everyone who is honest. I mean, if you look at the way that phase was designed, blocking almost all aid into Gaza, starving the population, forcing the survivors into smaller and smaller concentration points in the south, destroying the remaining homes and civilian infrastructure further north, so there's no place for them to return to. And then deploying Israeli occupation forces, US mercenaries, foreign contractors in this so-called GHF, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation scheme, even, by the way, as they have been accelerating ethnic cleansing on the West Bank. And all of that, alongside the bombs and bullets and missiles and drones, the Israeli regime's most effective weapon in the extermination of the people in Gaza in recent months has been food, or more precisely, the denial of food, the weaponization of food. And the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is not a humanitarian plan, it was always a political and a military plan, is helping them to weaponize food. It is not a humanitarian organization. It did not exist before. It is a hodgepodge of Israeli and US intelligence agencies, sketchy finance firms in the US, as I said, mercenaries and private military contractors, posing as humanitarians, which, by the way, is a war crime called perfidy.
I was going to ask you about
posing
perfidy, yeah.
as humanitarians, but actually set up as a part of the regime's strategy of occupation for this final phase of the genocide, set up, by the way, by the CIA and Mossad operatives. And they registered themselves first in Switzerland. Switzerland has now canceled their registration and has dissolved them as a foundation because they ultimately realized what this was all about. And they've been universally condemned by the UN, by every credible humanitarian organization. Switzerland has now dissolved it and so on. So why did they do this? They didn't do it to feed people, which is now clear, because though the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation sites have shown themselves to be aid traps, where you are more likely to be killed or abducted than you are to actually get some meager amount of food. They set it up because they needed a fig leaf to tamp down on some Western public pressure for the Israeli regime to allow people to have food. So it became a kind of smokescreen for genocide. Look, we've set up this, this thing here. They set it up, secondly, as a vehicle to get the UN out of the way of the genocide, because the UN has been the main lifeline, UNRWA, of the people in Gaza. And so they needed to say, well, the UN is no good. We keep them out, but we've got this thing instead. They set it up also as a tool to help to drive genocide survivors further and further southward into this handful of concentration points, so that they could clear Gaza, because they weren't setting these things up in the north. By the way, there were 400 distribution points for the UN. There are 4 under the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which shows you the purpose is to concentrate people into these smaller areas, and then having concentrated them to prepare them either for departure or for death, right? So they needed to create this fake humanitarian organization, which has now been revealed as a fake humanitarian organization. And recent revelations of giggling US mercenaries shooting at starving people. And, Katie, if you think about what people had to do, they told starving Palestinians who are watching their children die, you have to walk for hours. You have to risk your lives on the way. because many people get killed on the way. Then you have to stand in these cages under the hot Gaza sun for hours waiting. In the process, a lot of people have been abducted by the Israeli occupation forces before they even get to the cages. And you know, for Palestinians, being abducted by the Israeli occupation forces means beatings, torture, sexual assault, disappearance, and death. Many people are turned away with nothing from these distribution lines. A lot of them are too weak or sick or disabled or pregnant or caring for children, so they can't even get there in the first place. And then if you risk it, you have a very good chance of being shot dead by Israeli quadricopters and tanks and snipers and so on. Hundreds have been massacred at these sites. And then even if you were to succeed and to survive, what you get is this meager package of dried foods that are well below nutritional requirements, that don't include baby formula, that don't provide you with the clean water or your fuel that you need to cook it. And then as you're carrying that back, the Israeli troops are destroying the neighborhoods you came from, including not just homes, but tents and refugee shelters, so that you can't go back there, so that you have to remain in the cages. That is not an aid plan. That is a component of the genocide. And if there's one double atrocity happening now, Katie, it's that you still have some media corporations reporting about this as just kind of an ineffective humanitarian aid scheme.
Right.
No, it isn't. It's intentional.
If only. I mean, that's a sad thing. It's like it's one level. I mean, they're so evil that it makes me long for a fake, dysfunctional, food not providing, aid not providing organization. But no, it's so much worse than that. It's a death trap, right? Like, again, the levels of evil, it's not just not providing aid, it is killing people. I mean, it is really sick, really, really sick. And it reminds me of the way that Nazis told people they were going to showers. And then, in fact, they were gas chambers. I mean, that kind of honesty, the same kind of honesty. And, you know, I want to address something because I like to make sure that we amplify dissident voices. Someone pointed out in the comments, someone said they did not say concentration camps. And Bibi said today that Gaza should be rebuilt for the Gazans. Why do you lie? Oh, it's true. Bibi says that it should be rebuilt for the Gazans. Craig, as a human rights lawyer, what is your thoughts on the claim that this is a plan for the Gazans?
Yeah, well, I think that it's perfectly clear. I mean, I heard Netanyahu, who, by the way, shouldn't be in Washington, shouldn't have been allowed to fly over European airspace, including several parties to the International Criminal Court. Let's remember who we're talking about here is a man who is indicted for crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court, who is a fugitive from justice. And he is flying freely to the United States for talks with one of his co-perpetrators in Donald Trump. You know, the language that was being used by Netanyahu today would be comical if it wasn't so sinister. He was talking about, you know, people should be free to leave, right? People should be free to leave.
What a prince he is.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a prison. You know, and this is precisely why people have been so convinced for almost 2 years that this is a genocide, because the entire strategy has been based, yes, on mass killing, but also on this language of the Genocide Convention that it says creating conditions of life designed to bring about the destruction of the people in whole or in part. And that's what Netanyahu has been doing. And now, having achieved that and looking to make it even worse by concentrating people, you don't want to call it a concentration camp. You're going to have to be creative like the BBC reporter and find another thing to call an imprisoned population, starting with 600,000, moving to 2 million of civilians concentrated in a tiny area on the ruins of Rafah, surrounded by fences and walls and by Israeli troops, in which they are not allowed to leave it unless it is to depart from Palestine altogether. And the fact that if that's not a concentration camp, then I challenge you to find some amusing euphemism to try to cover up for that crime. By the way, that itself, because it is large scale and systematic, is a crime against humanity in international law. And then to recognize that what that means is an already intolerable situation where they have destroyed the hospitals and the clinics and the schools and the water supplies and the food supplies and the agricultural fields and the bread stores and everything necessary for a life without severe suffering. And then you cynically say they should have the choice to leave, to freely emigrate. To even utter those words makes you complicit in evil to a degree that I cannot even imagine. This is genocide. This is extermination. This is not something that is going to be covered up by the use of euphemisms like humanitarian zones or the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or the, we're going to let you take a shower in the concentration camp in the 1930s. And people need to stop playing these kinds of games because we are all going to be held accountable someday for this.